Hi, I'm George Maestri, and today we're going to take a look at 3D printing in SketchUp. Now, SketchUp is a 3D program, and it will allow you to export objects for 3D printing, either with your own 3D printer or through a service. So we're going to take a look at how to import and export STL files, which is the standard format for 3D printing. And we're also going to take a look at the Materialize plugin, which allows you to export to a 3D printing service that has partnered with SketchUp. So the first thing I want to do is let's talk a little bit about STL. STL is the format that most 3D printers will use. And SketchUp has happily provided you with an STL extension. Now, the SketchUp STL extension can be found in the extensions warehouse. So all you have to do is search for SketchUp STL, and that's the SketchUp approved plugin for STL import and import. And then all you have to do is download and install it. So I have my extension manager here, and you can see I've got STL import and export, and that is enabled. So once we have this, we can import and export STL files. Now, when you do 3D printing, the number one rule is the object has to be solid. Now, here I have two objects, but one is solid and one isn't. So if we actually turn them over, you'll see that this one has a face missing on the bottom. So if you have a hole in your model or a face missing or the object really isn't complete, then you will not be able to 3D print it. So before you actually go into the process to 3D print, you need to make sure that your model will actually be a solid and be completely closed and what they call watertight. So I'm going to go ahead and just select this second model here and delete it. Now, if we want to, we can export to STL. And if we have the extension loaded, we will get an Export STL option. And that option is actually pretty straightforward. We can export everything in the scene or only the current selection. And then we can also select the units. Now, one of the things about 3D printing is that it is real-world printing. So if your model is 10 feet high, it probably won't fit into your 3D printer. So you need to make sure that whatever you're printing is scaled appropriately. Now, typically, I use either inches or centimeters in my scene description and then just use model units to make sure that I've got the right scale. But if you want, you can export in different units, but beware, that may actually resize your model. So if you're working in inches and export as centimeters, then 1 inch will become 1 centimeter and your object will come out a little bit too small. And then we also have file format, and we can either do ASCII or binary. I typically choose ASCII because it gives me more freedom to edit the file later. So we can always export from here. Now, I'm not going to export right now, but I do want to talk about getting third-party models into SketchUp that are 3D printable. Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can certainly bring in STL files or SketchUp files from somewhere else, or you can search for them. Now, if we go into the 3D warehouse, there is a way to search for objects that are printable. So, for example, if we were to type in, say, airplane, that will bring up all of the airplanes, but I only want to find the ones that I can print. So all we have to do is, after our search term, we type in the term is, and then a colon, printable. And when we do that, it will only search for those objects that are supposedly watertight. So, for example, this object here should be completely watertight, and I should be able to download that and print it. Now, each model and each contributor are a little bit different, so you want to make sure that your model is actually watertight before you go to print, but typically these have been checked. Now, another way to find 3D models is to go to outside services. Now, one of my favorite services is called Thingiverse. And this is a forum or a site for a lot of people who do 3D printing. And as you can see, we've got a lot of different types of objects here. So, for example, if I wanted to type in a search term, let's type in the term deer head. And when we do, it'll bring up all of these different types of deer heads, and we can actually download those to print. Now, one of the top ones here is called this low poly deer head. And one of the reasons I want to select that is because, well, it is low poly. It has not as much detail as a lot of the things you will find on Thingiverse. Now, one of the things about that is that if you have a model that is really highly detailed, it may take a while to load into SketchUp. So all you have to do is select whatever object you want and then just go ahead and press download. Now I've already downloaded it, and if I want to, I can import that object. So I have it here. And if I go into my folder, I can find my STL file. So I want to make sure that I set my SketchUp type of file here to stereolithography. And then once you've got that downloaded, you should be able to find your STL file. And then I'm going to go ahead and import that. And when I do, notice how it comes up as an object. And I have it as a complete object, and I can now print that, or I can just use that in my SketchUp scenes. So if there are other types of objects you want and just want to bring them into SketchUp, you can certainly do that. Now, if you do want to print, you can certainly use your own 3D printers, or you can use what's called the Materialize extension. Now, I'm going to go ahead and delete this object here, and I'm going to show you another extension here. We have a 3D printing extension called i.materialize. And if you want, you can install that into SketchUp, and this will connect you to a third-party service called Materialize. Now, these people have been around for a long time, and they are partnering with SketchUp so that you can actually print directly from SketchUp itself. Now, I have the extension already loaded. Now, if I want to, I can select this object, and under Extensions, you will find Print 3D. Now, that's if you've installed that particular extension. So I'm going to go ahead and select Print 3D, and then it will tell me to upload my model. Now, in this case, it will upload everything in the scene. So you want to make sure that you clear out the scene and make sure it's only those things you want to print. So I'm going to go ahead and select Upload. And what this will do is upload my model to that particular service. And then it will load a browser. It will analyze my particular model, make sure there are no holes in it, make sure that it is watertight. And once it's analyzed it, it will actually price the printing of that object. So here's my object that I've created in SketchUp, and it now gives me a price. So if I wanted to print it in just plastic, it would be about $42. If I want to print it in silver, it's $1,600. Now, silver is very expensive, but we also have steel and aluminum. We also have things like ceramics. You can print in ceramics for only $30. And we have all sorts of different types of materials. So this is wonderful. So you can also change the color if the material allows it. You can also change the scale if you want. And again, you can create an account and then print your object. So this is a really easy way to print out prototypes and that sort of thing. If you want, you can also export to 3D printers using STL. So hopefully this gives you some options for importing and exporting objects to 3D printers.